All right, welcome back. So today we're going to wrap up our discussion about points leading into Gen Con. Tomorrow I'll be doing one more video with some odds and ends that I haven't talked about yet in terms of what I think we might see at Gen Con. If these videos have been helpful to you, please like and subscribe. I expect to be doing a lot of post Gen Con videos as well, including I'm going to start doing some bat reps and some live streaming of some games, both Legion and Armada. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about commanders. My thought process with this was 30 points was about my cutoff. Commanders that are under 30 points, most of them are costed okay. I have a couple that I am going to advocate for a price increase on. And for over 30 points, that's when cost really becomes an issue with your commander. And all of the ones that I'm going to advocate for a price decrease on are over 30 points. My feeling is recently FFG has been, when they release new commanders, the cost of those commanders have been getting lower and lower, and some of that's ability, but some of it I think is also for balance in the game. And to keep that balance, I think some of these higher priced commanders could use a little bit of a decrease in points. The only over 30 point commander that I can think of that we got really recently was Palpatine with the Super Star Destroyer, and we'll talk about him a little bit in this video as well. So when we get into it, so I'm going to start with General Dodonna for the Rebels. Dodonna came in the core set. He's been a huge Rebel commander ever since, has a super strong ability, and he's as cheap as any commander that we've seen so far has been. We've never seen a commander under 20 points. Based on his ability and his cost, you see Dodonna a lot in games. Not exclusively, there are other commanders that see a lot of play with the Rebels as well, but you see Dodonna a lot just because his cost efficiency is great. He works on every ship, you don't have to worry about range, and you can, if you really work in those crits that you can force through, which have become more common since Dodonna came out, he's even more powerful. So I'm going to advocate that Dodonna gets a 4 or 5 point increase here. I'm not going to go crazy with the point increases, but 4 or 5 points I think would be adequate for Dodonna to put him in a better place in comparison with other commanders. Next is Mon Mothma. She's right at the 30 point area, and she was really good when she came out, and she's still a decent commander, but I haven't really seen her a lot. She has a very specific ability that really makes it so only certain ships work really well with her. She's great in an MC30 list. She works well with things like hammerheads and CR90s, things like that. Smaller ships that have evade tokens. Bigger ships aren't going to fly with Mon Mothma because they don't have evades. So I'm going to advocate that Mon Mothma, because she's pigeonholed into very specific lists, that she get a little bit of a point decrease, maybe down to 27, 28 points. Now I have Ackbar in here. Now Ackbar is a great commander. We still see him a lot on the table. So the main reason why I'm going to say anything about Ackbar is, one, I want to compare him to the next commander that we're going to talk about, but also because of what I'm advocating for with point decreases, he's going to be an outlier with the Rebels, and extremely expensive. I think the next one down would be Sato. I'm also not in, but Sato I believe is 32 points. So a 6 point difference. I don't think that's really reasonable to have one commander that's that much of an outlier in cost. So given my other choices, I'll advocate for maybe. I still think he's probably should be the highest cost rebel commander. So maybe 34 points for him, 34, 35 points for Ackbar. But that's only if we were to get these other point changes. Other rebels that are 30 or more, we have Maydeen and Riken as well. I'm not going to advocate for point decreases on them. I considered it with Maydeen, but I've played against Maydeen lists, and good players can really take advantage of Maydeen, and he can be really good. But I do think it takes an experienced player to play Maydeen really well. So I decided not to decrease his point cost. Now, next one is going to be the biggest one for the rebels. Like I said, I have one in each, and we've got Leia. I would love to run Leia more. I've got lists that I have played with Leia and I really like, but she's just so expensive, and she has a tax in her cost. We've talked about taxes on costs before. Her ability is great. Is when you reveal the command dial, if you don't resolve another command with a token, you can get the token ability with the command dial. But you can't use another token. So tokens are kind of thrown out with Leia. They're not very good. I mean, you can use them, but then you can't use her ability either. And the whole reason why you take a commander is for their ability. And while her ability is strong, you're taxing your list on other tokens. And I think to be at the top end of the commander cost scale, 38 points is the most expensive commander that we've seen. It's just way too expensive. I think to get Leia played more, and I think she would get played more if she didn't cost so much. I'm going to advocate for a full 10-point decrease on Leia, all the way down to 28 points. I think we would see Leia a lot more. I know I would play her more if she was down around 28 points. And I wanted to compare her to Ackbar. Right now Ackbar and Leia are both at 38 points. Ackbar has such a better ability. I mean, he is pigeonholed a little bit. He needs broadside ships, so you pigeonhole him into lists with broadsides. And you have to fly a certain way with them. But as long as Ackbar's there, you're getting those extra dice out of your sides every time, as long as you don't shoot out your front, and you're not intending to shoot out your front if you're taking Ackbar. So, Ackbar's just a much better commander at the same cost. So, Ackbar, a little bit of a decrease if we get other decreases that I think would be appropriate. But Leia, definitely, I think there's two commanders that need a point decrease, and Leia's the first one. I don't expect FFG to go with all of these changes that I'm suggesting. I'm just pointing out ones that could happen. And if a change happens, I think Leia is at the top of the list for any point changes. And like I said, advocate for 10-point decrease. So now we're going to go into the Imperials. So Jer Jarrod, I'm picking. He's a great commander. You can always use his ability. It's slight tax on it in that you have to, take a damage, but you can take the damage to shields. So it's not really, especially early in the game when you're going to use it more often. It's really not that huge of a tax. There are some players that really don't want to be doing damage to their own ships, but taking a damage can save you a lot of other damage or put you in the position to deal a lot more damage. So he's really powerful. I don't necessarily know how competitive he is. I see him in tournaments all the time, but I very rarely, if ever, see him win a tournament. But because he's in tournaments so often, I think he's, his cost is probably a little bit on the low side. I'm going to advocate for like a 2-point increase on Jar Jarrah, up to about 25 points. So Vader, Vader, has been a very popular commander. At least in my meta, we don't see him very much anymore, and I think part of this is you have the Vader officer. Vader officer gives you not quite, but nearly the same ability as the Vader commander for 1 point. And Vader's 36 points. Vader's, he's good. But there is another tax on him, in that you have to spend defense tokens to use them. Usually people aren't too worried about that. If they need the reroll, they'll spend a defense token, and there's a lot of defense tokens like contain or dual redirects where you feel like you can afford to spend them. But I just don't see Vader very much anymore, and to get him in play a little bit more, I think we need a little bit of a decrease here. He's still really powerful, so I'm going to advocate for probably a 4 to 6 point decrease, 30 to 32 points for Vader. Now Palpatine, he's the most recent commander that I have in here, came with Super Star Destroyer, and he's actually gotten a little bit of not an unintentional, but he's gotten a little bit of a boost with Wave 8, in that we now have a new defense token. We have the Salvo defense token. So because his card says place 1 defense token of each type on the card, you're getting, instead of 4 defense tokens, you're now up to 5. And that's a pretty powerful thing. But I do think he's a little bit overcosted. I don't ever see him being played. And I think part of it is when you're playing an opponent, they're going to have similar types of ships in their lists. So if they're going to have big ships, they're going to have a lot of brace and a lot of redirect. But they're not going to have a lot of evades. They'll have contains, but there's mixed feelings in terms of how valuable the contain token is, because there's so many ways to force damage through. And then Salvo just isn't very common just yet in the game. It's there and a lot of people are trying it, but I think when we get back into competitive play, it'll just have to play out in terms of how much of an effect Salvo has. And then on the other side of it, if you're playing against a small ship list, you're going to see a lot of evades and a lot of redirects probably, but you're not going to see as much brace, and you're not going to see the contain. And right now, I don't think you're going to, because I don't think people are going to force the Salvo onto a small ship, because you really need a good rear arc in order to do that. So I don't think you're going to see Salvo a lot either. So you're talking about 2 main defense tokens. So now you're only getting his ability, a strong ability for 2 turns. It's not super great. So I think Palpatine could use, a 5 to 7 point decrease, get down to 28 to 30 points. He's just not. I think he was overcosted to begin with. All right, now my big one with Imperials. So Tarkin, like the Donna, came in the core set, so he's, an original commander. I think part of the reason why I think he was 38 points was in order to balance the core set so that both the Rebels and the Imperials had a similar point distribution within the core set, so that you could set up, a learning game or just a basic game, at home, or if you're just buying it, you'll be able to get 2 similarly pointed lists out of the core set. And I think in order to do that, that's why you see such a disparity in the points between Dodonna and Tarkin. So like I advocated for a price increase on Dodonna, I'm going to advocate for a big point decrease on Tarkin. Now, a lot of you probably know I'm a huge Tarkin fan, but I'm a Tarkin the character fan. So that's why I try and play him and try and create lists for him. But other than me, I don't really see him played very much, if at all, anymore. So I'm going to advocate for a full 10 point, just like with Leia, a full 10 point decrease on Tarkin. Still a good ability, just not as valuable as other abilities out there. And he's the highest price Imperial commanders, and there's Imperial commanders for lower cost with much better abilities. So full 10 point deduction for Tarkin. So thank you very much again for watching. Again, please like and subscribe. We're going to have a lot of Armada content. I'm going to have possibly a live stream of a Legion game coming up soon, because I was able to set something up with a Legion player. Hoping to do Armada games shortly. So please subscribe so that you're made aware of all of this content. I do try and post, links to videos in obvious spots, but if YouTube is your thing, subscribe so that you can find the videos. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.